Welcome back to another ADSR and massive synth tutorial. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that at youtube.com/ADSR tuts. So that was a little demo of the sound we'll be making today. It's kind of a Mini Moog style bass in massive. So jumping right into it, I have a new massive sound. I have a blank massive sound made on this track. It's a really simple sound. It's quick and easy, pretty quick to make. So we'll just get right into it. So in oscillator 1, we're going to choose the pulse saw waveform and keep the wavetable position all the way to the right. Take the pulse width down maybe to about 15-20%, and then the amp just turn it down a little and keep the filter output where it is, and let's detune to -12. And then moving on, we're going to go to filter 1 and we're just going to choose a low pass. And we're going to leave the cutoff just maybe under 50. Turn the resonance down to about just to maybe a little above 0. And that's all we really have to do. Keep the mix all the way up, and you can keep the filter in parallel. And that's really the only oscillator you need for this type of sound. And moving on to the noise oscillator, we can introduce a little bit of white noise, but we don't want a lot. And now we're going to, let's click on our oscillator tab and make sure all that's how we want it. We're going to turn the glide up to about maybe just around halfway, and then we can keep all of that how it is. And now going to the voicing tab, it's very important to have, let's turn the unison up to 2. It'll help thicken up the sound a little bit. And we're going to choose monophonic. And then we're going to have always check, make sure always is checked for the trigger. And you can leave all these off. And then the routing, there's nothing too crazy going on with the routing. Let's uncheck insert 2. And then, yeah, we're not even going to use the feedback for this, so that's fine. And then in the global, that's fine too. So going on to the first envelope, which we're going to use to modulate the cutoff frequency, we're going to turn the attack up just a little, because that's going to give it kind of that, help give it that old school vibe. And then we're going to turn the level down just a little bit. And the decay, we're going to turn down maybe just about 10 or 15%, and then turn the level down as well. So you get this sloping shape, and then you can keep the S slope, morph, level, and release how it is. And let's take that, grab that crosshair, and we're going to modulate our cutoff frequency up all the way. So here's the sound that we have so far. Now we're going to take that envelope and we're going to modulate the resonance as well. And now let's go to our second envelope. And with that, you can leave how it is. And I think you can do the same thing with the third envelope. And then with the fourth envelope, we need to turn down the level and the decay in just a little bit. And now we're going to set up some effects. So we're going to take the dimension expander, and we're going to use it really subtle. Sorry. It sounds, if you're trying to do like a vintage retro sound, it sounds better if you don't overdo the effects, because a lot of the old school synths didn't have really rich effects and reverb like some of the modern day soft synths do. So we're going to keep the size fairly low and the dry and wet fairly low. And on the FX2, we're going to take a coarse, which is a great way to add kind of a vintage sound to it. It helps thicken up the sound as well. So we're going to turn the dry wet up to around 20-25%. Turn the rate down just a little. Keep the offset kind of where it is. You can maybe turn it up a little, and then the depth down just a little as well. just clicked echo. I like doing that on some of the patches that I make that I'm going for more of a retro vintage feel, because I think it helps take some of the top bright end off of everything, and I think that helps with the overall sound. So now one of the last things we gotta do is we're gonna carve out some EQ. So let's, on the low shelf, let's boost the low shelf and turn down the boost knob. And on the frequency, we're gonna cut that down pretty far. On the high shelf, we'll turn it up a little. So you can hear how important the EQ is in that sound. Here it is, off and on. So it's a pretty important part of that sound. And you can mess, I mean, if we take this, cutoff, that's a pretty good sub right there. You can get some really cool results with that. And another cool filter for vintage sounds is the acid filter. Kind of gives it that cool vintage feel. And you could always add that to filter 2 to add another kind of depth to the layer of the sound, and then turn the mix down just a little. And finally, the last thing you can do in Massive to kind of get more of an analog feel is take an LFO or even a performer and kind of turn it on a slow setting. So we'll just do an LFO right now, and we'll use a square, and then with the square right kind of in the middle, and then we can use that to modulate, let's say, the wavetable position just a little. Turn the rate down and maybe the amp down to around 70 to 80%. And then we can even take that to modulate just the resonance just a little. So if I turn the amp down, in theory, you'll hear the difference. It's going to be subtle. So the amp's all the way up at 100 right now. Now I'm going to start turning it down. So it's a subtle change, but it will help add some variance to your sound, and you can grab another LFO and then you can turn the rate to a different amount. So this one will be lower, and we're going to take a sine wave, turn the amp down pretty low, and then we can use that to maybe modulate the attack just a little of our first envelope, and even the level. And finally, we can use maybe both of those LFOs that we created to modulate the dry and wet of our chorus effect. And again, that's going to be really subtle. So here's with both of the LFOs we created, kind of modulating just a few different sections lightly in our sound. And I'm going to grab the 6 LFO and have it modulate the amp a little bit on the noise. So it is a subtle change, but it's one of those things that can help create the illusion that it's more of an analog sound, because the analog circuits in a synth like a Mini Moog, they had some fluctuation. It's what kind of made it thick and give it character, and those are what soft synths have a hard time emulating sometimes. So with Massive's extensive modulating possibilities, you can create some of that effect by modulating using like the LFO, and then modulating maybe your envelopes, the cutoff, the wavetable position of your oscillator and just doing it slightly. So that's basically the finished sound, guys. If you have any questions or comments, let me know below and I'll get back to you. And yeah, I hope you got some cool tips and tricks this week, and stay tuned for next week's tutorial. Thanks for watching.